Wars continue overseas, and voters cast ballots in critical primaries, courts blocking controversial policies, and a federal judge forces Justice Department to hit pause on a billion-dollar political slush fund. While all this happened, the Trump administration made yet another move. And that move was Bill Pulte being elevated to Director of National Intelligence. Go ahead and check this out.
Mr. Pulte has absolutely no intelligence background. He has no national security background. The law was written to prevent this kind of appointment. What he does have is a record of manipulating public information, even as the housing czar, to try to pursue attacks against President Trump's enemies. So the idea that President Trump picked this guy, I fear, to use all the information in the intelligence agencies to potentially go after Trump opponents, or the law says he can stay for 6 months. Well, 6 months conveniently takes him through the election. And the notion that somebody who's got no experience in this field.
Now that's the same Bill Pulte who became one of Trump's loudest public defenders. The same Bill Pulte who spent years helping amplify claims and investigations of mortgage fraud against Trump's perceived political enemies. And now he's been handed one of the most powerful intelligence positions in the federal government. Maybe that's a coincidence, and maybe it's part of a larger pattern, because this isn't really about one appointment. It's about who gets rewarded. And it's about what happens when political loyalty becomes a faster path to power than our public trust. And once you see that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. You see it in our courts, at the border, inside the Justice Department, on the campaign trail, and even in the wars we're told are under control. So let's connect these dots. This is The Quiet Loud. I'm D'Anthony Collins, and y'all, this is one of those weeks where the headlines look separate until you step back. I mean, take a look at Iran and Israel, Lebanon, Ukraine. I mean, the border, the courts, the primaries across the country, and the Justice Department. They all point toward the same thing. Towards a country being asked to fund chaos while pretending everything is under control. So before we get into it, please, if you could help me out with a like, subscribe, comment, share this podcast, okay? Join our quiet quorum. It would mean so much to me, okay? So much. All right, we're growing incrementally. So please, every like, every subscribe, every share does us a great good. All right, let's get into it. All right, so like I said before, we'll start overseas. Let's have a look at Iran and Israel, Lebanon, Ukraine, Russia. Because the United States is now staring at two foreign crises happening at once. In the Middle East, Iran reportedly stopped communicating with mediators after Israel escalated its military campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iranian state-linked reports say Tehran is tying the Lebanon fighting to a broader U.S.-Iran ceasefire negotiation. All right, especially around the Strait of Hormuz and the ongoing blockade. Reuters reported that Trump said talks with Iran were still ongoing, even as Iran-linked outlets described them as completely suspended. That's what we've all heard, that everybody has been backing down. So let's pause here, because the contradiction tells you something. One side, Trump, says talks are continuing, while Iran says the talks are functionally frozen. Now, we know Trump is lying. He's been lying the whole time, this whole while. He has falsely said nearly 40 times or more that Iran wants to make a deal, all the while things are blowing up in the background. You're saying they want a deal, and then you come out with this fire and fury bluster that blows everything up. But in the middle of all that confusion, Israel and Hezbollah are still testing the edges of this brittle ceasefire. Okay, Reuters reported that Hezbollah accepted a U.S.-backed proposal for a mutual halt to the attacks, while Axios reported that Lebanese officials told U.S. that Hezbollah was prepared for a broader ceasefire if Israel reciprocated. All right, that doesn't sound like peace to me. That sounds like pressure building, even more pressure building. And we've seen what aggressive regimes like Netanyahu's Israel are capable of. And while all that's happening, we're hearing that Ukraine just suffered yet another massive missile and drone attack from Russia. Reuters and AP reported that Russia launched more than 600 drones and dozens of missiles across Ukraine, killing at least 18 people and injuring more than 100. Ukrainian officials said Kyiv and other cities were hit with residential buildings, clinics, infrastructure, and civilian areas being heavily damaged. So when people say America needs to pick a lane internationally, this is the problem. The world is not giving us one lane. We can't just walk away from Ukraine. They're literally fighting for democracy, as we should be. All right. Iran is still unstable. Israel and Hezbollah are still trading threats. Ukraine is literally pleading for help for air defense and our backing, while Russia is steadily escalating on them. Okay. They've done a great job of holding and recapturing some territory that Russia had taken before, but they're not going to hold out forever. It's been 4 years or more. Okay. It's time for us to stop hedging our bets and step up to protect and have the backs of our partners and allies. All right. Because America is still trying to manage all of this happening over there while domestic politics at home are getting more unstable by the week. Because foreign policy doesn't just stay foreign. We have issues here, but that stuff shows up at home. It shows up in our gas prices and our food prices, in our ridiculous defense spending and the budget fights that, go around that fund everything but the public good. And the question every voter eventually asks is simply this: is this making my family safer, or is it just making everything more expensive? Because people are inclined to understand that they may have to pay a little bit more for the public good. But when we find that we're just filling some billionaires' pockets with our money, you know, that's where Americans start to draw the line. All right. So since we're talking about our fiscal policy here and our budget, let's bring it back home, because the Trump administration's so-called anti-weaponization fund is now running into the one thing that apparently it did not plan for. And that is public opinion, public scrutiny. Okay, AP reported that Trump is reconsidering the controversial $1.8 billion fund, and Reuters reported that Trump plans to drop it, at least for now, after political backlash and legal pressure. All right, he should have seen this coming. But one thing that we know that Trump will do is he's going to do everything he can. He's going to do it fast and as much as possible and see what anybody pushes back on. He's going to wait until the pushback is so heavy that he just says, oh, I didn't really want to do it anyway, right? This is what we always see. He'll do something until the pushback on it is so heavy that he just turns around and walks away from it, right? The Justice Department paused implementation after a court order, and lawmakers in both parties started to question whether this money could benefit Trump's allies, including those connected to January 6th. Now, let's go ahead and call it what it looks like, what we know it to be, okay? A slush fund. All right. We know he's going to take that money and use it for whatever he wants to use it for. Okay. People get all up in arms about the word slush fund, but let's call it what it is. Okay. When you create $1 billion pool of money tied specifically to political grievances, when critics are warning it could pay out Trump allies, when even Republicans start saying, hold up, we can't even defend this thing, then yeah, we're in slush fund territory, okay? The Guardian reported that Senate Democrats blasted the proposal as a MAGA slush fund, while Republicans also began pressing the White House to shut it down because it was complicating other priorities, including immigration enforcement funding. All right. And this is where the story starts to get bigger, because Washington is simultaneously debating massive new immigration and border enforcement spending. So while families are dealing with groceries and rent, healthcare, gas, insurance, student loans, you name it, the government is spending its time arguing over more enforcement money, more legal grievance money, more political protection money, more funds for the people already closest to money and power. Makes no sense. Okay? That disconnect is the whole story here. Because if you are a working family and you miss a deadline, you miss a payment, you miss a renewal form, you may lose those benefits. You may miss money out of your paycheck. You could be evicted, sued, whatever. But if you're close enough to Trump's orbit, they were trying to build an entire fund around grievance and compensation. I mean, hell, reparations for criminals, fraudsters, cronies. We know what we're looking at here. That is not law and order from the party that claims to be about law and order. And the only reason it's slowing down now, like I said, is because people started looking directly at it. All right. Now let's stay with the courts and on to another court story. A federal appeals court has ruled that the Trump administration cannot remove currently serving transgender troops from the military while legal challenges continue. Reuters reported that the court allowed the Pentagon to keep blocking new transgender enlistments for now, but said currently serving transgender troops can't be expelled during the litigation. AP reported that the panel found the policy likely raised serious constitutional concerns while the administration is expected to appeal it. We know they're going to appeal it. You know, they're always picking on marginalized communities, people they feel like are too small to stand on their own and defend themselves. Okay, now let's be absolutely clear. This is not some abstract culture war debate. These are people who are already serving, already wearing the uniform, already past the standards, they're doing the job. And this administration's policy tried to turn their own identity into a disqualifier. This matters because a military that claims to value readiness, military readiness, should be asking, can this person serve? Can this person meet the standards? Can this person do the job we are asking them to do? And is their allegiance to this country? Not can this person survive the politics of this moment? Can they hold their identity inside? Can they not be who they are? And this is where the courts still matter. Not because the courts have always saved us. We know that that's not true. We know that they don't. We've had some real letdowns due to the court, okay? But because sometimes when politics tries to turn people into targets, the courts are one of the last places where government still has to come and bring an explanation. It still has to explain itself. And in this case, the government is still being forced to explain why people already serving their country should suddenly be treated as unfit for the job. That is not strength, okay? Like I said, that is, hate. And they're trying to scapegoat that in the uniform, all right? We're not going to let that happen. We're going to keep talking about that. But let's stick here in the country, all right? Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming primaries because June 2nd is not just another election day. It's primary day for at least 6 states here, all right? Voters are casting ballots in California and Iowa, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. California's primary is especially important because the voters are choosing finalists for governor, for Los Angeles mayor, and key House races that can help determine control of Congress. Now, California is a giant test because we already know Governor Gavin Newsom is term limited, so he's out. We're not talking about another Gavin Newsom governorship. The state's 2 top primary system means that the 2 highest vote getters move forward regardless of their party. Okay. And key House districts are being watched closely because California's new map may help Democrats counter Republican redistricting that moves into states like Texas and Tennessee. All right. In Iowa, Democrats are watching a tense Senate primary as they look forward to a possible pickup opportunity with Senator Joni Ernst retiring. Thank goodness. Going with the hog castrator. Republicans have Trump-backed candidates competing across major races, including the race to replace Governor Kim Reynolds. And Axios framed the broader Democratic primaries as a fight over the future of the party itself, with progressives, moderates, and generational change candidates battling across key races. All right, so we're going to see how that shapes out because the midterms are not just about Trump. They're about what kind of opposition will emerge for the last 2 years of Trump's lame duck. All right. Do Democrats run as managers of the system or challengers to it? Okay. Do they have to chase the center or try to rebuild trust with working people, young voters, rural voters, black voters, Latino voters, and all of the people who have been told for years that politics don't care about them? Our tent is big enough. It should house all of those people. Not saying that we're going to agree on every single thing 100% of the time. That's what having a big tent means. That means that sometimes you're going to have people that disagree. We're liberals. We're not going to agree on every single thing. All right? But we need to be chasing that big tent and being true to it because Trump can be unpopular and Democrats can still fail to capitalize on that. We've seen it. We're dealing with it, with the fallout of it right now. All right. That's the continued danger. But the opening is there and the frustration is real. Okay. These maps are moving and we can see it. The economy is heavy and it's weighing us all down, and these wars are expensive. But elections are not won by vibes. We've seen that. They're won by organization, messaging, trust, turnout, and whether voters believe someone is actually fighting for their lives, not just for their votes. All right. So let's talk about the border a little bit, because federal authorities confirmed that an 869-foot cross-border tunnel was discovered near Otay Mesa along San Diego-Tijuana border. Now, NBC San Diego reported that the tunnel was about 265 meters long and roughly about 21 feet deep, connecting near Tijuana and the San Diego border area. All right, officials described it as a sophisticated tunnel, and Mexican reporting indicated that the property may have been used for logistics, weapons, explosives, and other trafficking operations. Now, let me ask the obvious question. After all that wall rhetoric and the billions of dollars and the chants and all the family separations and the DHS cruelty, and after all the political theater, if the smugglers can just dig underneath, then what did the wall solve? Okay? Not saying that the border wall doesn't have a use, but everything was riding on that, right? Okay? That doesn't mean that border security is not real. It's real, all right? That doesn't mean that tunnels are a new phenomenon, because they're not. But that's the exact point. It does expose the dishonesty of pretending that border policy can be reduced to a singular wall or a slogan or a raid or a photo op. Okay? Trafficking networks adapt. Cartels, they adapt. They go around. They go through. Heck, we see they go under. And that is why real security is not just concrete walls and cameras. It's about intelligence and regular inspections, securing our ports of entry, okay? Tracking the financials of these different organizations or fronts, okay? All kinds of anti-corruption work alongside with international cooperation, which we don't see anymore. We're no longer trusted, all right? Technology, labor enforcement, drug policy. And yeah, we need more staffing in and around our border. But what we keep getting instead is all this political theater. They want more money for DHS, more money for ICE, more spectacle, more fear, more cruelty. And meanwhile, an 869-foot tunnel tells us what we should have known all along. That big smuggling, they weren't waiting around politely on the other side of that wall. So when politicians tell you that the answer is just more enforcement, then I want you to ask them, enforcement for whom? Against whom? And at what cost? And what does it actually even solve the problem? Because if the solution is toxic, expensive, and still easy to tunnel under, then maybe it was never really a solution. Maybe it was just a cheap slogan. And slogans don't stop trafficking. All right. So I told you that these stories look separate. Iran and Israel, Ukraine and Russia, Trump's DOJ slush fund, the transgender troops ban, primaries, the border tunnel. But take a step back, and the pattern is right there. All our systems are being tested right now, and the courts are being asked to hold lines that they may hold or may not hold. Voters are being asked to stay engaged through political exhaustion. And ordinary families are being asked to absorb the cost of decisions made far above their heads. And that's why I do this, because the headlines are loud, but the pattern is quiet. And if you can hear the pattern, you can understand that moment. So I want you guys, as always, to stay grounded, stay informed, and stay loud, quietly. We'll see you again. This is The Quiet Loud. Y'all take care.